Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff. As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please join our community by subscribing to us on the socials. Our handle on all platforms is at N2E Fantasy. We are also available on all major podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy. Alex, what do we have on today's show?
On this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, we are going to be breaking down some league and coaching news. We're going to be previewing the championship games. And first, we're going to recap the divisional round of playoffs. Jeff, the first matchup of the divisional round was the Houston Texans at the number 1 overall seed Kansas City Chiefs. At Arrowhead, not a fun game for me, and I don't think a very fun game for most fans who watched in general. Chiefs won 23-14, very low scoring game, very cold conditions. I think it was in the 20s. This was a mess because to me, the Chiefs didn't look very good at all, but Houston looked worse at times. So after having amazing special teams against the Chargers, Houston had a missed 55-yard field goal attempt, which was a terrible decision from the head coaching standpoint to begin with. They had a blocked kick. They had a kickoff that went out of bounds and got a penalty and got a good field position for Kansas City. They missed a kick as well. Everything about this was terrible from the special team standpoint. The defense was the only thing keeping Houston in this game. Offensively, they had one route that was successful against the Chargers for the most part, and that was an in route up the middle, cut the safeties into with Nico Collins, and it kind of abused the Chargers, got the Chargers on the back foot last week. But this time, Spagnuolo, who's one of the best defensive coordinators in the game, schemed that out. So Houston was not successful in that and really couldn't come up with many answers other than trying to get Joe Mixon going. And that was pretty much the only thing going for them this matchup. But on top of it, all of that, we also have terrible officiating from the refs. We had two roughing calls on Mahomes, on defenders that hit or didn't hit Mahomes. So we had one that looked like barely grazed the helmet and looked worse from the angle the ref was at. So that is kind of understandable, but still annoying. Another one was Mahomes extended the play with his legs, dropped down, and two Texans defenders hit each other and didn't even touch Mahomes, and they threw a flag. But to the ref's credit, Mahomes tried to bait defenders on another play by running out of bounds and trying to draw a flag, and the Texans players didn't get called. So kind of hit and miss with the refs. I don't enjoy it. I don't like that they don't give the benefit of the doubt to the Texans when the Chiefs offensive tackle held Will Anderson, held Daniil Hunter, obviously worse than plays that they flagged Texans for holding, and they don't call it. I don't like it when McDuffie is draped all over Nico Collins and tugging on him from behind, and they don't call the pass interference or defensive holding at all. It seems like they shut down Texans drives where they actually started to move the ball and extended Chiefs drives when the Chiefs were struggling to move the ball. And I don't appreciate any of that. The Texans were doing enough to get in their own way. They didn't need the refs' help. So ugly game. Chiefs survive an upset. Texans, huge disappointment. We both predicted Kansas City was going to win. They did win. Jeff, do you have anything to add to any of that?
And I think Kelsey's production was a game plan mistake by the Texans. That's the one guy that you can't let beat you in games. And teams have done a very good job of taking Kelsey out of game plans this year. And unfortunately, the Texans did not fall in place here. And Houston, as you mentioned, missed 7 kicking points. So that's a 20. Man, there's just some coaching mistakes by the Texans here. And I think the Chiefs right now are built to play against other people's mistakes versus taking it to teams right now. So that will be interesting in their championship round matchup. But as you mentioned, we both picked the Chiefs, and the Chiefs did win. So this was an expected result, even though we were all rooting for the Texans. I would assume everybody but Kansas City was rooting for the Texans.
Yeah, part of the reason why they couldn't cover Kelsey is they're missing their two safety slash nickel players in Petrie and Ward. So there really wasn't extra people to throw at Kelsey. They could have schemed better, which is definitely something that could have helped slow him down. But Kelsey just decided to show up and play in the playoffs when he hasn't been playing well in the regular season.
I did
So
have a theory that he was saving himself for the postseason, his old body. But also, I think we fail to remember that the Chiefs could be so much better than they are right now. Rashee Rice was having a insane first month before he went down with his knee injury. And if you add Rashee Rice to this team, I just feel like this team would have been, it would be much more of a juggernaut. So if teams are going to knock Kansas City out, this is probably the year. With Rashee Rice, I anticipate him being suspended for the first 4-ish games next year. But man, he's a guy I still would take in drafts. I think he's with missing 4 games, he's 47th ranked in projection points. So he's a guy that needs to be taken in drafts next year, even if he's suspended.
let's not forget that Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell are both hurt for the Texans.
Agreed.
Which, to me, I think, in my opinion, both of those guys are better receivers than Rashee Rice. And
At
on
least
top
better
of that,
decision makers.
maybe. And with the addition of those two safety slash nickel players for the Texans, I think maybe that could have made a difference. If you put both teams at full strength and put them in the neutral ground, it would be much closer, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think next year, though, with Kansas City, with Rice going into year 3 and Worthy going into year 2, and they probably take the training wheels off of Worthy, that is one of the scarier rookie contract duos in the entire NFL. So let's not forget they're both on rookie deals for a little bit longer.
Both extremely fast and athletic, too.
Yep. No Sky Moore, though.
Nope.
I know that we have people that
His
believe in Sky
his
Moore until they're blue in the face.
his ceiling isn't the sky no more.
Nope. All right. So we move on to the number 6 Washington Commanders at the number 1 Detroit Lions. And this is one of the highest scoring playoff games of all time, as the Commanders and the Lions run 45-31. And in this particular game, the Commanders outplayed, outcoached, out-aggressived the Lions, which is funny because I believe that's the only way that you could actually beat this Lions team is to match their aggression and run up the score, as the Lions have tended to do this season. Some of the coaching gaffes is why would the coaching staff let Jameson Williams throw a pass? They got way too cute. He threw an interception. This is a guy that has tried to get out of tickets by using his clout. He's also gambled at least once that I remember, maybe twice, and been suspended from the NFL. He's not a guy that makes... All I'm painting here is he's a wide receiver. He's not a great decision maker, and yet you put the ball in his hands to make a good decision with the football, and I'm just like, what'd you expect? And he threw an interception, and he's a great receiver. Don't get me wrong. He's much better. He's much more improved than I ever thought he could be. So it has nothing to do with him being a wide receiver. But also in this game here, I've noticed that Jahmyr Gibbs is very special. I think they should have used him a little bit more in this game instead of a little bit less. They got too cute with trying to sprinkle Montgomery into this game. Gibbs was carrying them into the playoffs. Montgomery had missed 4 weeks with his knee injury. And Daniels is a cheat code for a team that doesn't have much. They have one wide receiver that I care about. Their offensive line isn't great. Their running backs are either old or one-dimensional. And I just feel that Washington here has like a joker with Daniels. And I think he'll keep them in any game, including this championship game coming up. But we both picked Detroit. We both got it wrong. What did I miss?
I think that the Lions got too cute with some of their offensive play calling. They did a little bit too many trick plays. I thought that Jameson Williams had that really good one, that 61-yard rushing touchdown was awesome. I agree with you that he should never have thrown that ball at the end of the game. That was idiotic. It looked like the Commanders completely called that that play was going to happen and had that whole area covered. I don't think that when you're trying to split defensive coverage, last thing you want to do is take one of your top two receivers out of coverage to try to throw the ball. So I hated everything about that play. I understand why they wanted to switch it up, but I give a lot of credit to the Commanders because I think the Commanders played more precise football. They were very effective. They kept moving the ball. They slowed down the Lions enough. They got Jared Goff, I believe, to turn the ball over 4 times, 3 interceptions, 1 fumbled loss. Despite the defense not seemingly that talented, despite the offensive line supposedly not talented, despite the fact that Terry McLaurin and Zach Ertz were their only real passing down weapons, and Ertz didn't even get the ball that much. They've found ways to be quite productive, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Lions had significantly more yards than the Commanders. The Texans had more yards than the Chiefs. However, the Commanders and Chiefs both won the turnover battle, I believe. And that's what won the entire weekend for all these matchups. So
That's fair.
we have Washington and Detroit contrasting teams. We have an old quarterback versus a rookie quarterback who's very electric and mobile, where the old quarterback can't move. We have Dan Gamble, who seemingly makes decisions on whether to go for it at random or flipping a coin, where we have Dan Quinn, who either himself or someone up in the booth is very aware of what the right decision is to go for it or not, and when to gamble, when to roll for it. And they're the most effective fourth down and short yardage decision makers in the league, and it just showed the contrast between the two teams.
Absolutely. And it'll be very interesting to see what they do in the championship game, if they bring the same aggression or if that was just a Detroit only game plan. All right. So we can hop over to the other NFC game. This is kind of like a Oreo where you have cookie frosting, cookie, you have AFC, 2 NFC games. So it's a double stuffed Oreo. And then you have a AFC game to finish it. And they've done this since I've been little. So this has always been their philosophy of how they want to do these games. And it's usually the 1 seeds playing on Saturdays just because they've had the week layover. But the Rams at the Eagles is the other NFC matchup, and the Rams just ran out of juice and they lose 28-22. It's a very good, very competitive game in my opinion here. Some news coming out of this game is Stafford is contemplating his future. Kupp is going to play, but he's contemplating his future with the Rams. Other news that came out of here, Jalen Hurts got hurt in this game. He hurt his knee. That tackle where his knee bent backwards did not look good. I know it made people that I was watching the game with cringe, so never a good thing, but it does appear that he's back at practice and he intends to play against the Commanders, which now we can spoil that for you now that we got through the Eagles winning. And Saquon Barkley is just incredible in Philly. And at the end of the day, I truly believe, and obviously I'm saying it, so of course I believe it, that he's the reason why they're in the NFC Championship game. Like, I don't think this team would have been nearly as good if Barkley was not a part of it.
Yeah, they wouldn't have made it this far if Barkley wasn't there, in my opinion, too. So this game is a one. We'll point out the obvious. The team that won the turnover battle won. The Rams fumbled twice, but no interceptions from Stafford. He was mostly good throughout the night. But the Eagles didn't turn the ball over at all. This was a rush-heavy game from both sides. Kyron Williams, 19 rushes, 106 yards. Saquon Barkley, 26 rushes, 205 yards, and 2 touchdowns, with Jalen Hurts getting 70 yards and a touchdown himself. Crazy game. The more talented team won on almost pure talent. Saquon Barkley's rushing attack plus the defense. However, I thought the Rams looked better coached, and they came awfully close to pulling out an upset, in my opinion. I think the Rams had multiple chances to take this game, and unfortunately, those turnovers really hurt them in a very competitive, close game. So I would expect Stafford to be back. I would think that they move on from Cooper Kupp. I don't know for Philly. I think Jalen Hurts is going to play, and if he doesn't, I don't. It's either Saquon's going to save the day for them, or they're going to get steamrolled by the Commanders, and we're going to have a rookie in the Super Bowl.
For
I
the
don't
first
know.
time.
There's going to be a lot of storylines coming out after this weekend. So we will see how that shakes out, and we'll talk about that more when we get to that next week's preview.
So Kyron Williams had the 2 fumbles. I'm right on that, correct?
He had one, he's credited for one fumble lost.
Okay. Do you think any of his ball security hurts him or gives Blake Corum a leg up for year 2 or anything crazy like that? Because McVay has been known in the past with Jared Goff. I'm using that as a specific example where he moved off that quarterback to get something a little more that suits it. And we have some breaking news too, Alex, that just came through. Your Houston Texans have moved on from Bobby Slowick. Prime head coaching candidate.
Thank God.
A prime head coaching candidate last year. And I fear that Liam Cohen is going to be barking down that path really soon. But we'll get to Liam in a little bit here. But that just came through. They moved on from Bobby Slowick, who was a big head coaching candidate last year.
Yeah, I had issues with how the offense was his year 1. I didn't think it was perfect, like the inability to run and the inability to coach the offensive line.
But they fixed the running year 2 with the right back.
Well, the right back compensated. I wouldn't necessarily say they fixed it. He compensated for it. It's like putting a Band-Aid over a bleeding wound. They just looked worse year 2.
Some of it's finding the right players, though, for the scheme, and I feel like they went out and did it, at least at the running back position.
Yeah,
wow.
So I am pleased with this as a fan because I would have preferred him to fix it himself, but the only way to seize on CJ Stroud being young on a rookie deal and improving the offense is to move on from the coordinator position that's not working. And that shows a lot more toughness in D'Amico Ryans as a head coach because he's willing to fire his buddy and improve the whole team.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I picked Philly, you picked the Rams. Back to this game really quickly, and then we'll get to some league news here that I had already alluded to. But so I'll take the victory there. The next matchup is the number 3 Baltimore Ravens at the number 2 Buffalo Bills. This was every bit the matchup that they promised us. It came down to the end. Came down to a dropped pass, and the Bills do win 27-25 at home. They also complete the season by going undefeated at home, 11-0. I don't know how many teams have went 11-0 at home, but that sounds very big. And is Buffalo becoming one of the bigger home field advantage teams in the NFL? Like, I know Seattle for a while, you didn't want to travel there, but Lamar did look good even in the Ravens loss. Some takeaways from this matchup is the Bills did lack a killer instinct, and they should have put the nail in the coffin at halftime. They had a chance to go up 3 scores coming out of halftime, which would have effectively eliminated Derrick Henry from the game, because I don't see them running Derrick Henry down 3 scores. And I think that would have ended the game a lot sooner for Buffalo, but they do end up winning. They do just enough. They protect the football. Baltimore did not protect the football, which you have said already that is a theme this weekend. You protect the football, you win. And holding on to the ball in this game was the difference in this game. The Bills were more prepared in this game. I mean, that's plain and simple. That's the difference between concentration drops and interceptions and fumbles. But the biggest source of turnover in this game or drops was Mark Andrews, who had a fumble and a drop in this game. He dropped a game-tying 2-point conversion with a $1:30 left, which would have left Josh Allen with a minute 30 to do something. But is Mark Andrews on the chopping block now? And are we more likely to see Likely have a likely good year next year?
I don't really think he is. I think that he's been battling some stuff, and it's unfortunate that he dropped that and he had a fumble because I thought surprisingly Lamar Jackson played very well, especially in the second half. So this was a really great back and forth battle between the two of them, and in some ways, I think Lamar Jackson actually played better than Josh Allen in this game, and Josh Allen got the victory. So, this really cost the Ravens, but I don't think that that's the only reason. It's not like he's someone who's constantly messing up. He's someone who's been very valuable to the Ravens organization. So, we'll see. I mean, maybe there'd probably be more trade interest in Mark Andrews than there would be in Dalton Schultz from the Texans right now. So,
That is true. That is true, but Mark Andrews is out of guaranteed money, so they could cut him for just saving cash and not it wouldn't affect the cap at all. But I
I
picked Buffalo, you picked Baltimore, and Buffalo won. What was the last thing that you wanted to say about this matchup, Alex?
I was just gonna say, I think someone would actually be willing to give them something for Mark Andrews, but it's nice to know that they have the cap flexibility to just release him. The only thing else I'll add for Buffalo is I felt like they didn't get enough going on the ground here, but this is one of those other cases where the other team also had way more yards than the team that won. It's just field position and winning the turnover battle. This is a textbook weekend for that, I guess.
Yeah, and I didn't think there was any crazy calls, and I think the reason for that in this game was I think it was a little cold, and the referees didn't want to call anything, so hard to
Well,
have calls.
they're both evenly matched and similar kind of quarterbacks. Like they're not perfectly similar, but they're similar in stature in the league. Top four, top five quarterbacks, mobile quarterbacks. Very, very similar in that regard.
Yeah, and it's nice to see Allen's growth because I feel like a younger Josh Allen would have thought that it was him versus Lamar in this game. And Allen knew that he needed to do just enough to win this game and nothing else mattered. And that's why his stats were not great because he didn't need to be flashy in this game. So he does whatever the team needs him to do. And I think that came with age and maturity, to be honest. So, did you see the celebration video after Coach McDermott was talking to them and Josh Allen clapped a little bit early?
No, I
If
didn't see
not, you'll
that.
have to go see it because Josh Allen's just sitting in the background, ready to start clapping like for 30 seconds, and then just starts doing it mid speech with a smile on his face, of course. So he's a jokester. All right, you ready for a little bit of leak news? As we had just mentioned, the Texans just relieved offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick of his duties. Do you think that Bobby Slowick gets any job going into 2025? A quarterback's coach. What was he before he was the offensive coordinator? Do you recall?
I think he was like a passing game coordinator or quality control or something.
Yeah, those are two of those made up positions that they give people that don't have any expertise.
Let me see if I can specifically find it. Yeah, he was
He needs
the
to
San
go back and
Francisco
be like an offensive line coach.
He was the offensive passing game coordinator for San Francisco in 2022. Before that, he was the offensive pass game specialist. Before that, he was just offensive assistant. Before that, he was defense quality control coach. Before that, he was a defensive assistant.
So he's never really had a position that he's specialized in. That's interesting. It's interesting that that's a path, but it's also interesting that he started on defense, switched to offense. Like normally you start on one side of the ball and you get up to head coach, but you don't typically flip sides of the ball either. Very interesting career
Well,
path.
he played wide receiver for Michigan Tech. So he started as a wide receiver, then started coaching as a defensive assistant, and then switched back to offense.
Yeah. But did you see that he went in San Francisco as a defensive quality coach in 2018 and in 2019 they switched him over to an offensive assistant? That's
Hmm.
pretty weird for the same team to like flip you to the other side of the ball. It's like
Well, a lot of
the defense didn't want him.
some of these professional teams that believe in like huge coaching staffs, they'll bring in offensive guys to help the defense plan stuff out from an offensive perspective, and they'll do the same thing with the defensive guy. with the offensive coaches to help them get the defensive perspective. So, I mean, that's not
Yeah,
unusual in that regard, but it
it's
is
fair.
unusual that he never coached an actual position.
No, he needs to go learn how to coach an offensive line. You should start with high school first. I'm terrible. I'm terrible. But speaking of people that have been relieved from posts, the Jaguars relieve general manager Trent Baalke of his GM duties. Good move or bad move, Alex?
We should tie two things together in this one news blurb just to wrap it up because we should announce that the Jaguars hired Liam Cohen as their head coach after initially him turning them down because he wanted his own GM and they had Trent Baalke. Shad Khan, the owner, previously on a Zoom call had Trent Baalke on the call with them when a reporter asked him would he consider firing Baalke if the new head coach wanted, and he alluded that he would. So Liam Cohen goes back to the Buccaneers. They're getting ready to get him paid as the highest offensive coordinator in the NFL. But before he signs the deal, he has the appointment set to go in and sign it, and then he no-shows them. He has a sick child, and the child went to see a specialist, and he used that as an opportunity to miss out on the meeting and then meet with the Jaguars who reached out to him after firing Balky per his demand and offering to make him paid as much or more as the Ben Johnson deal and hire his own head coach. So that's very attractive to him. I don't know how all the sequences played out from Liam Cohen's side. It's just what's being reported out there, but everything about this looks shady. However, to address your comment, Balky is a terrible general manager who hit on a couple first round picks, nothing else later, no other first round picks. So maybe he hit on Trevor Lawrence. He's been in the league for I don't know how many years now, and we're still questioning whether or not he's a hit. And then Brian Thomas Jr. Like maybe ETN, sort of, but as a first round pick, I don't think he was a first round quality prospect. So maybe three guys that he's hit in his entire tenure with the Jaguars absolutely deserve to be fired. Should have been fired with Peterson to begin with, and maybe none of this would have happened, but it did. And so now we have a hugely messy situation. Cohen is a very bright guy, only had 1 year as a coordinator with the Bucks, but did coordinate with the Rams. So he had a year and a half with Baker Mayfield, and he's been pretty successful. It could end up being a very, very good hire, but it looks really shady how it went down, and it really
Yeah,
throws a lot of dirt on him.
I agree with that. But if they got rid of Bulky ahead of time, we wouldn't have this really cool story to talk about. So I'm a person that doesn't like to be in drama, but I do enjoy watching drama, if that makes sense. So this is very drama filled, like will he, won't he? Or for my Office fans out there, this felt like snip snap, snip snap. Yep.
How
So
many vasectomies can a man go through? You want
exactly,
you don't want kids, I
exactly.
get snipped. You want kids, I get on snips.
Just high class drama here, and
Ugh.
in a kind of a boring time of the year too. But I think that he's burnt his bridge with the Jaguars. And if it doesn't work out, or not with the Jaguars, with the Buccaneers, and if this doesn't work out with the Jaguars, he's going to burn his bridge there, and it'll just leave 30 teams that he could potentially coach for. Again, when we always talk about coaches and jobs, there's only 32 of these jobs. Like, these are the mecca jobs in the whole coaching industry. So we're good there. But I wish him success. This does make me question his communication skills, his leadership skills, all of that. But he can put that all to rest with a successful year one. So just because I have questions about him doesn't make it true.
And on top of all of this, we had the next candidate that was probably in their priority. Robert Saleh was flying in the next day to probably sign as the head coach after his interview, in my opinion. And now he finds out about it and has to cancel his plans, and he ends up agreeing to go back to San Francisco as the defensive coordinator because of all this fallout. So this caused a lot of moving chairs, and we have no idea who the Buccaneers are going to hire as their OC now because they got screwed over in this situation. So Baker's gonna have what, his eighth OC in 9 years or something like that?
No, and I didn't even realize that he had a history with Liam Cohen with the Rams, like a short stint when he was with the Rams.
Yeah.
So I didn't even realize that they had an ability to have some chemistry going into this year. But now, no matter who the Buccaneers bring in, I think you got to, after 2 successful years in a row under 2 coordinators, you got to give Baker the reins here. So, right. So, minor news, very expected news. The Vikings do sign Kevin O'Connell to an extension. So, we thought we did mention offline, I think last week, that he's going into a lame duck year, and now the Vikings aren't allowing that to happen, and he's going to be one of the highest paid coaches in the league. And I think a lot of his future success is going to be tied to how well he can develop and coach JJ McCarthy, because I believe that's the path that this team will be going. Good or bad signing by the Vikings here?
I think it's a no-brainer, excellent decision by the Vikings, who they
I
have.
know. I'm letting you rate each one.
They have a guy who, no matter what quarterback he throws out there, puts out a competitive team, and he revives Darnold's career with this team. They've got an excellent roster, or at least top-heavy, excellent roster that they can fill out this offseason, and I think he's the number one likely coach of the year candidate at this point. He was your pick preseason for coach of the year. I just want to point out that I think you would have picked Sam Darnold as your comeback player of the year if it wasn't for the AP saying that it's intended to be for injuries and life-threatening situations you overcome. Because I think there is a chance it's still Sam Darnold, regardless. But
yeah, but that brought our brains right to Kirk Cousins and the Aaron Rodgers of it all.
Yeah. So I think it's the best move that they could make. Secure your head coach, and then next secure your quarterback, whoever you decide it is.
Yeah, I think the fact, so unless they get a first round pick back for McCarthy, which is possible considering this quarterback draft, like if you spent a first round capital on him and he hasn't played, I feel like you got to play him. Like, hey, you're an offensive coach, you're a quarterback whisperer, you spent a first round pick on this guy, now you got to give him a shot. Like, I can see that being a conversation that happens here. But if they're offered a top 10 pick for him, I think that changes everything, because he went outside the top 10, correct? Like 11?
I think he went 10 or 11. Yeah, they traded up before the Broncos to take him.
Yeah, so if they have a top 10 pick on the table for them, I do think you have to entertain it. I'm not saying you have to take it, but you have to entertain it, because you're getting return on your investment. First of all, you'll be able to have capital to build other areas, and yeah, I just feel like that, and also you're gaining the extra rookie year on the rookie because you lost that with McCarthy.
I think the smarter decision, in my opinion, it's I want to do the opposite, because he didn't lose his job due to performance. He was doing really well in camp, really well in preseason. He got injured, and that's when Sam Darnold took over. So it's not like a Trey Lance situation. As far as we know, he doesn't stink, and Kevin O'Connell is a quarterback whisperer. He's on a rookie deal. I would tag Darnold and trade Darnold to somebody, or keep Darnold for another season. Like, I think that's the smartest move right now. And then make sure that you have the guy going forward. I don't think a top 10 is enough to move on from McCarthy, because this is an incredibly weak quarterback class. In my opinion, there's only two guys that are potentially worth a first round pick. Only one of them seems like a more obvious potential success in Cam Ward than Shedeur Sanders, who didn't play anybody in college. So I don't think Milrose for sure thing. He might be an end of the first round kind of pick just for the the fifth-year option. Ewers, I don't think is very good, but could go second or third round. Jackson Dart could end up being a sneaky higher pick than people think, because he played so well in college. But that's about it. But it's those five guys potentially, in my opinion. I don't think Ohio State or Notre Dame's quarterback are going to be good. That's just my opinion on the pro level. So if I'm a team outside of the top two guys and I need a quarterback, like if the Giants watch Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward go 1-2, I would consider the third overall pick for McCarthy because I think he's a better prospect than those other guys, even though he's pretty raw himself.
Yeah, I think this top 10 of the draft has a chance to be a trade fest because there's more position specific areas now and not really just talent based at the top. So if you need a quarterback, you need to get into the top 2 picks. If you want a wide receiver, you need to be in picks like 4 through 6, somewhere in there, like 3 through 6 maybe.
But I could also see, you tag Darnold.
Yep.
Maybe a team would trade you a second and a third or second and fourth or a couple seconds to get Darnold, who just showed something. And maybe you wouldn't get a top pick like you potentially get for McCarthy, but you get something.
Yeah, and they're at a spot right now where they need cheap young players, so I could expect that. I expect them, if nothing else happens, like if they let Darnold walk, they keep McCarthy, I would expect them to sign a whole bunch of undrafted free agents to contracts just to keep the cost management down on their
Or
roster because they are a little bit top heavy right now.
trade down their one first round pick. I think they have a first round pick and 2 fifths, and I think that's all they have in this draft so far. So they need
So not a lot of
to do
young,
something.
controllable options.
Yeah.
But speaking of young, the Raiders went with the youngest pick that they could go with for their head coaching position, and they hired 73-year-old Pete Carroll. So he'll be 74 just as the season starts. I know Alex thinks this is a great pickup. I would tend to agree, but I have said from day one that he needs to have a good succession plan that the Raiders ownership core is comfortable with because 74 isn't exactly a spring chicken.
Yeah, this is a directionless team, and all they're trying to do is to rebuild the culture, and they kind of have a Seattle Seahawk kind of defensive setup right now. So it kind of weirdly makes sense that Pete Carroll comes in. However, outside of Bowers and, maybe Jacoby Myers, it's completely barren on offense. We probably think that AOC probably isn't the guy. I mean, maybe there's a chance of reclamation there. I know for a fact that it's not Gardner Minshew, and Gardner Minshew is at a point in his career where he needs to be on a much better team. So I could see Gardner Minshew on the move to maybe an Indianapolis Colts who strike out on other options or somewhere else. The Raiders need a running back. They need another wide receiver. They need a quarterback. I don't know if they'll get a quarterback. Maybe Russell Wilson will rejoin Pete Carroll there in the short term and rely on a revamped defense to compete with 3 really good teams in the AFC West and the Chiefs and Broncos and Chargers. So really competitive division now with 4 probably Hall of Fame coaches when all is said and done, who already have 9 Super Bowls and I think 20 conference championship appearances. So incredible move to stabilize their team until they can find the next coach of the future.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with the move for that reason. I just don't know if this is a long-term thinking move.
It's a 3-year deal when other
Mhm.
coaches are getting 5. So I think it's very short term.
Yeah. So I do believe that it'll be okay. I do think that he will begin to turn around this team and the trajectory of the team. I think just having Brady's consistent voice in the room, because it always felt like the Davises were very all over the map. I just think Brady's going to be very consistent for better or for worse. Like sometimes consistency's bad because you can be consistently bad, but he's bringing like a calming presence to this organization that has been in flux since probably Gruden got fired now. So I think they went through 4 coaches since Gruden got fired.
Well, if you're counting 2 interim coaches, yes,
There's 2
probably.
interns. There
Yeah.
was Antonio Pierce. There was Josh McDaniels. There's 4 right there because Pierce was also an interim, so he was one
There's
of the interns turned permanent.
Gruden, the first defensive coordinator who
Special
became
teams, I thought.
the special teams guy who was
Yeah,
the
you
interim
wanted
guy.
him
I think he probably would have been better than what Pierce turned out to be. Like,
for
I
sure,
don't.
and
I hate
McDaniel.
when I hate when people were given like a decent chance and just completely squander it and don't even try. Like that annoys the crap out of me. So Pierce squandered what could have been a decent opportunity this year. And he squandered it from the get-go when he hired the former Bears offensive coordinator to be his offensive coordinator, which was never going to work and seemed pretty obvious it was never going to work, but he did it anyway. So, no, you lost it, Antonio Pierce. I was in your corner until the season unfolded. Sorry. It's nice to see an adult there with Pete Carroll, though.
It is. Does he own any car dealerships that we need to know about?
I don't know.
Oh,
I have no idea.
Little Antonio Pierce fun. But what isn't fun, and we kind of saved the best for last here, the Chicago Bears finally land the formerly unlandable Ben Johnson as their head coach. Ben Johnson has returned to the Lions the last 2 years after interviewing for head coaching positions. Seemingly could have gotten either one of the last 2 years. He bet on himself. He waited. He moves into a really good offensive situation right now. Pretty good defensive situation too. So he just might need to do some tweaking and some culture building with this team, and it could be onward and upward for the Bears, which you believe with Ben Johnson leaving, the Lions will take at least a mini step back. The Vikings, as they switch to McCarthy, which we both believe is going to happen, they're going to take a step back because I don't think 14 wins is obtainable with a quote-unquote rookie. So the Bears have a shot now to kind of like pull up and just like slide into an extra couple wins here and potentially play for a playoff position next year. But before I let you talk about Ben Johnson, the Jets stole away the defensive coordinator of the Lions, who played with massive amounts of injuries this year, and he was able to always overcome it. He overcame it, especially in that Vikings game towards the end of the season, and they hired him as their new head coach. So first, I want you to break down these two hires, and then I want to know where you think the Lions go from here, losing their two cornerstones of their offense or in their defense.
So I think for the Bears, this is the highest ceiling candidate that they could possibly bring in. It's the right decision to bring in an offensive guy to help mold Caleb Williams for the next couple seasons at a minimum, to get the most out of him, to put him in better situations. Ben Johnson comes from the Lions, where they had an emphasis on building in the trenches, so I think they'll target offensive line. I think he'll bring in more talent at the running back position in some form or fashion as well. I think wide receiver, they're pretty set there. They may even bring Keenan Allen back, and then they might target a pass rusher. That's what I would expect for the Bears in this offseason. I do think it potentially means Swift may be gone yet again, because Ben Johnson was there when they traded DeAndre Swift away. So potentially could happen again, or maybe they'll find a way to use him. I don't know yet, but it was very positive for the Bears. We'll see if Ben Johnson can hack it as a head coach, but I think it's a very positive situation for them. As for the Jets, Aaron Glenn, I'm up and down on. I do acknowledge, I think he only really had 2 or 3 bad defensive showings for his units all season. And that's with all the injuries that they suffered. They did a very good job of shutting down most teams. So I think that's incredible. I don't like how they utterly failed against the Commanders and how that came crumbling down. But what they did to the Vikings was incredible a couple weeks prior. So I think he could be a decent hire for the Jets. My only issue is who's going to quarterback for the Jets, who's going to be the offensive coordinator for the Jets. They have a lot of star power on that team, but I don't necessarily think it's a defensive guy they should have gone with in general. So I'm happy that he's getting a job. I feel bad for him because I feel like he's not going to be there in 2 or 3 years. Um, it's just how I feel about the Jets organization more so than Aaron Glenn, because I think he's a heck of a football coach. I just think he may not understand what he's getting himself into with how poorly that organization's run. On the Lions, I don't see how they don't regress from this point. I don't think the defensive side will be an issue. I think the offense is going to regress tremendously. And then if you don't have someone like Ben Johnson keeping Goff relevant, I don't know if they've now going to start declining tremendously. I can see a situation where they struggle with the next 2 years and they end up having to fire Dan Campbell. And I could see Dan Campbell winding up as the Saints head coach in 3 or 4 years. So I don't know. I think they need to find a way to right the ship. And if they don't bounce back, then this could be the end of their success.
For sure. Did Dan Campbell coach the Saints at one point, or was it the Dolphins? He was the
He
interim head coach for the Dolphins in 2015, and he did assistant head coaching in 2016 through 2020 with tight ends. Interesting. But yeah, I could see that. What if he went and was the offensive coordinator for Ben Johnson?
I don't think he would be an offensive coordinator. He is a motivator, and he is a culture guy. He's not an X's and O's guy, as he proves week in and week out with some of his decision making.
He cares more about the Jimmies and the Joes and the X's and the O's.
Pretty much.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of turmoil and turbulence coming up for the Lions. So we'll see where that puts them at the end of this, but it'll put them somewhere. And I'll be interested, and I think you'll be interested to find out too next year what they look like and what the changes are, because I don't think they'll be as aggressive on offense without Ben Johnson. I think that's a Ben Johnson thing, not specifically a Dan Campbell thing. Not a Dan Gamble thing.
We'll see if the Bears and Lions change accordingly then.
Yeah. We will. But yeah, so we have two coaching positions left. We have the Saints and the Cowboys. Cowboys are looking to sign their offensive coordinator, Brian Schottenheimer. That's where signs are pointing right now. The Saints, we have no idea kind of where they're pointing right now. They have a lot of people that they could hire. They could hire Steve Spagnuolo. They could hire Joe Brady, Mike McCarthy, a candidate out of left field. It's all possible. So I think they're keeping all options on the table right now. Any guesses from you who the Cowboys end up with and who the Saints end up with?
So right now it seems overwhelmingly pushing towards the Cowboys signing Brian Schottenheimer, their offensive coordinator, who didn't even call any plays as far as we know under McCarthy. So that kind of seems like a not so great situation, but that's where they want to go. I know you have heard some theories about why that would be, but if that doesn't pan out, then it's probably Kellen Moore, who was with them a couple years ago. Those are really the only candidates that have really been mentioned, because I don't see Deion Sanders leaving unless they give him a huge amount of money. For the Saints, you and I have talked offline. I think we both agree that they're waiting on probably Joe Brady to interview him as their head coach. But
They
I know
haven't tipped
you
their
also
hand at all, though. So
that's true, and I know that there's a lot of connections with McCarthy and the Saints. I just don't know if they have a quarterback. Their cap situation's a mess. Their roster's a mess. They have a lot of aging guys that are overpaid. They will not fire Mickey Loomis, so any coach that comes in is going to have to work with him. I don't know how many coaches want to at this point and want to deal with that roster, so I expect them to be the last ones to hire. I don't know who it'll be, though. Joe Brady, probably the number one option.
yeah, but I think no matter what, there's no rush for the Saints now.
Yeah.
Like, they have the pick. They have the one open job, in our opinion here, because the Cowboys is still technically open too. But we'll see what direction they go in, and they don't even have to rush through it, because it could be Kingsbury. I mean, it could be a lot of options that we just aren't seeing. And they have no incentive to finish this before the Super Bowl, in my opinion. So they might be the last holdout. But in order to get to the Super Bowl, Alex, we have to get through the championship weekend. And in the championship weekend, we want to preview the two games. The first one is a divisional matchup. Insane. They're playing for the third time this season. It's the Washington Commanders, the 6th seed, who took out the 1 and the 3 seed. They have a chance now to take out the 2 seed. So they have a chance to take out 1, 2, 3 in the NFC. They're playing the number 2 seed and their division rival, Philadelphia Eagles. And these two teams split in the regular season. So this game will be close. I don't think either team runs away with it. I think this is probably one of the more tighter games played ever. because A, it's division rivals. B, I don't think either team wants to be the team to make the mistake. So, and this is Jaden Daniels' first championship game. Hurts isn't 100%, so I could see this being a much more conservative game plan going into this game. Alex, I'll pick the game first. I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles because I do believe that they have more talent on the offense and defensive side of the balls than Washington does. But I will be honest, Jaden Daniels as the Joker this season does scare me.
I agree that the Philadelphia Eagles are the more talented squad. I also think that the Washington Commanders are perhaps better coached and are the hotter team. It's very tough to choose between these two, but I am very big on Philadelphia's defense, and I like Saquon Barkley, so I'm going to go Philadelphia as well. Wouldn't surprise me if this is a coin flip game and it goes the other way, though.
Yeah, and I think as fans, we love the coin flip games because it does increase our engagement. And I think the next game is also a coin flip game, and it's the number 2 Buffalo Bills at the number 1 Kansas City Chiefs. This is the Sunday 6:30 game. Alex, what are you looking for in this game, and who do you got?
I'm looking for the Chiefs to lose, and I'm going to go for the Buffalo Bills because I believe in Josh Allen more than Patrick Mahomes this season because the Chiefs have struggled mightily. If Buffalo can score more than 24 points, which I think they're fully capable of doing, I think that they will win this game. So give me Buffalo this week. Please, please knock the Chiefs out of the playoffs so we don't have a three-peat and I don't have to see Taylor Swift's face anymore. Until next year.
Obviously, I live 45 minutes away from Buffalo. I'm going to go the Buffalo Bills in this game as well. Rooting for them, rooting for the area. I know a lot of fans of the Buffalo Bills in the area. And yeah, so let's go Buffalo. But I do expect their offense to be able to outlast Kansas City. Obviously, turnovers, as we learned last week, could be the deciding factor in this game. So Josh Allen does need to take care of the ball. Patrick Mahomes did have more turnovers this year than Josh Allen did as well. So just a couple things to look at for this year. And also, learn from the Texans. Don't let Kelsey beat you.
Yep, and luckily they are a team that's accustomed to the cold, so being an Arrowhead is not going to phase them at all.
It's a warm front for them.
All right, well, that does it for another episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for downloading and listening to this episode, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps.
You can find us on all podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy and with our handle N2E Fantasy on all social media platforms. Please join our community and give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Hi, everybody.